Welcome to KRA's The Hub, the official podcast of KRA Corporation. And now get ready to hear workforce topics and trends you need to know on the go.
Hello and welcome back to KRA's The Hub. This is Doug Foresta. I'll be your moderator for today. And I could not be more excited to have with me a very special guest, Jane Oates. She's the president of Working Nation and former assistant secretary of the ETA, Employment and Training Administration. We're going to be talking today, getting Jane's thoughts about the recent ETA 2030 Vision Convening, the recent 2030 Vision Convening by the U.S. Department of Labor. Jane, welcome to KRA's The Hub.
Doug, thanks so much. Great to be with you.
Thank you. All right. So first of all, for our listeners, I will include a link in the show notes for the DOL blog so you can see what I'm referring to. But we're going to be talking about some of the takeaways from the ETA 2030 Vision Convening. And Jane, I thought we could just go through some of the points in that takeaway and get your thoughts as a former assistant secretary to the ETA, as someone who is committed to, through Working Nation, the future of work and thinking about that. So I guess my first question for you is, the first point was about equity. And you and I were chatting a little bit before we started recording. And I'm really curious about your thoughts about, do you think there's been a greater focus on equity since your time as assistant secretary? And if so, what do you think is driving that?
Doug, as we were talking before, I think that COVID brought out the inequities, the fact that so many people of color, so many women were essential workers who couldn't work remotely. I think that was something that bubbled up. I think then the murder of George Floyd brought the racial inequities really to the surface. And then finally, I think that I think there's been people focusing on equity for decades, since 1965, and we haven't made as much progress as many of us would like. But right now, with the talent shortage, I would say the third spoke on this wheel is that businesses really need talent, and they are really open to looking for talent in different places. So if they were people who didn't employ people of color in middle skill jobs, now they're really looking at that and saying, we should really take a closer look.
Yeah. And even I'm thinking about, for example, returning citizens, right? These are people with disabilities. These are labor pools.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's
the people with disabilities. It's incredible to me. Some of that needs some policy change so that they don't lose their Medicaid, particularly people whose disabilities require extensive medical care. Oftentimes an employer plan either doesn't kick in right away or isn't sufficient, isn't as rich as the Medicaid program was for their specific needs. We need to make some changes that people can work and still retain that they can work more hours, make more money every month and still keep that as a benefit. I think that's really important. It is criminal to leave the talent on the sidelines that we are leaving with people with disabilities. And I would say with the same fervor and passion that when people serve their sentence, if we believe in a country of law, then the law says they've paid their dues. Why do we make them keep paying back? And I mean, if you don't look at it from a human rights and a justice point of view, look at it from an economic point of view. Recidivism costs the taxpayer money? Keeping people out of prison is really something that's in the public good.
You bring up a really good point so there's the equity piece, there's the employer willingness, but then there's also, even if I'm willing as an employer, that there's policy changes that need to happen to support the employer willingness.
Absolutely. In some states, people with certain crimes on their record can't get a commercial driver's license, a DHL. That's silly. In some states, they can't get a regular driver's license, so they can't even do Uber and Lyft and DoorDash. This is crazy. I don't know. There are many people that drive next to me on highways that I think should be in prison for their driving. I don't think we should deny people who have paid their debt to society a license.
I think I ran into a few of them this morning.
Really?
Thank you so much. Let me ask you this one last question about equity in terms of workforce leaders. What do you think what do you think our listeners who are workforce leaders, what are some things that we could be doing or should be doing to really move this needle forward?
I think it's really hard. First of all, I believe that frontline workforce leaders, much like teachers, really are grounded in fairness. So I don't think they were ever part of the blockade against giving people certain jobs. But our culture has really developed things like economic segregation, like occupational segregation. And occupational segregation is real. If you say to a 20-year-old male, you should think about going into nursing, they'll look at you like you're crazy in many communities. And the same thing with teaching. The perception is that teachers don't make enough money to support a family. In many places, I think that's true, but in many other places, teacher salaries are being increased to a level that's at least commensurate with other entry-level jobs at a professional level. So getting a few years of teaching is not a bad thing. I wish we could get more men into teaching. I wish we could get more men into nursing. I certainly wish we could get more women into finance, more women into technology, more women into the CEO seat. But that CEO seat is going to take a little longer.
Yeah, and you brought up something that's a great segue into one of the next takeaways, which was about quality jobs and career pathways to quality jobs. Now, I remember when I went to school, there was a million years ago, there was almost a disdain for, let's say, Voc and even moving forward, tell me if I'm wrong, but even I feel like during the Obama administration, there really was a big focus on 4-year degrees as being the gold standard of moving people into quality jobs. And so I'm curious about, do you think that's shifting or changing? Are you seeing that changing at all?
First of all, I just want to, my friends that were in education during the Obama years, and certainly President Obama was very clear. He said that everyone in the United States should have a post-secondary credential. He did not say degree. He said that could be some professional credential that led you to a job, like an AWS certification for welding, or a community college degree, or a 4-year degree. I think he was very clear that should be the standard for all Americans, that high school alone was not enough, even though today there's 40 million people that don't have a high school diploma. So we shouldn't take that for granted. So I think, but to get to your question about the shift, I certainly want to say out loud the work that Opportunity at Work has done on the move for tearing the paper ceiling, moving away from just degree and into skills-based hiring. And really, I think everybody can get around skills-based promotion. I think that somebody who's been on the job for 10 years, working at a store, working at a plant, and they get overlooked for a position that's a little higher, maybe a middle management or a beginning management position, for somebody freshly minted out of college, that's unfair. I think we can all agree with that. I think the skills-based hiring piece is I'm still having a difficult time with that, because I don't want young people to think they don't need that post-secondary credential. They really do. And they're going to need it more and more as the economy continues to evolve. So I think that for right now, I think a quality job is really defined by, a lot of times, by the employee or the prospective employee. Obviously, it's salary. But also it is that job mobility, Doug, just that you're talking about. Nobody wants to be in a dead-end job. They want to be in a career path. I think flexibility has become really interesting and important post-COVID. Too often, I think people see that flexibility as being remote or hybrid work. That's just not going to be a possibility for everybody. It's a part of flexibility. But what are employers doing for those employees who can't work remotely or in a hybrid situation? How are they offering them flexibility? You're right. When we talked earlier, we talked about things that make us 15 or 20 minutes late, dropping our kids off, doing an early morning dentist appointment or doctor's appointment. Most employers make you take a half a day for that. So if you can't make it by your 9 o'clock start time, stay out till noon and use a half a day. If you are lucky enough to have paid leave, use a half a day of your paid leave. That's silly. Why not give me the flexibility on my job, if I can, to come in at 9:30, running late from my dentist appointment, be relaxed, and just work till 5:30 or 6 that day, finish my work. I think employers are more and more looking at that, particularly small employers who can't do that remote work.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And oftentimes in these cases, it's small adjustments that really don't cost the employer
We don't have to start when the bell rings. Because let's be honest, your coworker, if you're running 30 minutes late because of something real, not because you overslept or whatever, but of course, occasionally oversleeping is a good reason. But your peer that's sitting next to you may have gotten in at 5 to 9, but may have gone to the cafeteria, gotten a cup of coffee, turned their computer on. Actually, your start time is probably the same. So why make such a big deal of it? And why force me to take longer off than I need to take off?
Yeah, I think that's going to be a shift for employers. And you were mentioning before, again, about going back to worker shortage. Again, I think these are like some small, what you're talking about are some relatively small changes that employers can make that could make a big difference in terms of recruitment and retention.
Yeah, that's right. That flexibility can also be, this is probably more renegade, but also be in your benefits package. Today, if I go for a job and I don't need health insurance because my partner or spouse has it, that's accepted. They don't give me anything else because they're not contributing to that. What if they said to me, if you don't need health care, how about long-term care insurance? How about something that would benefit your children, like contributing to a 529 plan? There's so many different ways that an employer can demonstrate to a prospective employee that they care about them, that they're listening to their needs. Quite frankly, when you're 22, you don't care very much about contributions to an IRA. You care more about loan forgiveness, right? So give me that option. Don't give me a 401k, but help me pay down my school loans.
Was it Henry Ford said, you can have any color Ford as long as it's black?
As long as it's black. That's right. And unfortunately, that's how a lot of benefit packages are. And it's unnecessary. It's more work for HR, and I feel very sorry for them. I don't mean to lump more work onto them. They already do an amazing job. And a particular problem for those smaller employers who don't have a CHRO, but have somebody who's doing HR as part of a multitask portfolio.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you. The next point was one that I think a lot of people felt. I think COVID maybe really exacerbated this. I know for myself, when COVID hit, my daughters were 1 and 2. And so it's me and my wife. We're both working full time from home and parenting a 1 and a 2-year-old. Now, so the care economy, strengthening the care economy. Now, I want to recognize care is not just parents with young children. It can be a family member with a disability. It could be an elder. There's a variety of things. They talk about strengthening the care economy. I'm curious about your thoughts about that, and also just any efforts that you saw while you were at the ETA and what you think needs to happen.
Yeah, look, I think we can't move away from childcare being a huge hurdle for many parents, whether they be women or men coming back to work. And I think if we're going to do anything to increase our labor market participation rate, we've got to deal head on with childcare. And yes, absolutely, for the lowest income people, it's the biggest hurdle, particularly since TANF, the cash benefit program, has a 5-year lifetime limit. So it's not like these folks can choose to stay home. They have to go to work. So I think we need to worry about the middle class. I will tell you, Doug, when I was at labor, I got more calls about could I get their kid into the DOL childcare than I got for grants. People they want high quality, safe childcare. I don't know where safe is anymore, but and they need it to be affordable. I think as a rule, all childcare should be on a rotational scale that's based on your income. And I know that's difficult, but I think it's fair. And I do think we need to do something about that. And as you say, elder care, I feel sorry for the 40, 50, even 60-year-olds that are in the workforce. They're dealing with both children and their parents. And aging parents need a lot of attention. And by the way, we each during different times, I had most of my healthcare crises as a 40-something, not as a 60-something. So I needed that flexibility and that care economy concept when I was on chemotherapy. Like what kinds of things could happen for me? And that I was a relatively young cancer patient with a child. I think employers have to figure out, and maybe the federal government has to lead on this, how we describe the care economy across different stages of your life and different stages of your professional life as well.
I have a question for you that this has been on my mind for some time, because thinking about this, how do we get, because we need both affordable childcare, and then I think about childcare workers who oftentimes we know that they're mostly women. They're mostly from historically marginalized communities. I guess your thoughts about how do we both make childcare affordable for the people, care in general, affordable for the people who need it, but also make care jobs a sustainable wage for people who do care?
Yeah. Look, I think there's some really interesting experimentation going on in this space around the country. One is really teaching people how to do licensed childcare at their home. Really the entrepreneurship angle. If you're lucky enough to have a home, I mean, that's capable for children, there are programs that help you learn how to make your house safe, how to pass that licensure. I think that's really interesting. I think the second thing that I'm hoping gets applied to the larger child cares in the future are these employee-owned businesses, these ESOPs. I've seen it with car washes. I've seen it with small manufacturers. I think the next logical step is to break down some of these really large, very well-run, very reputable child care entities and say to them, give everybody a stake in the company so that if you can't afford to raise their wages any higher than you have, and I hope they can continue to raise them higher, but give them a piece of the company. I think that would be good both for the individual employee, but also good for the employer because it's going to retain your help. People are going to stay there. Your workers are going to want to stay with you. And because they know the company is a part of them, of their wealth gain, they're going to make sure everything done there is done to perfection. Yeah, I can see it with car washes around the DC area. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, it turns people from being like in what's a low wage, almost seen as a dead end job to, now you can be an entrepreneur. Like this is a skill. This is an important skill and you can be an entrepreneur and own your own business. Why not? Why would this not be? Why should childcare be different than a car wash?
That's
really?
Exactly right.
Yeah. And I feel like we should at least make caring for people as important as washing our cars.
Amen to that.
All right. So the last point that I wanted to talk about was they talked about the convening partners. It's no longer enough just to think about delivering WIOA services. And the point is about the importance of convening partners and sector partnerships. Yeah, I'm just curious about your thoughts about that, this DOL vision directive about making sure that we convene partners and work in sector partnerships.
Look, I think some of the workforce professionals that I met in 1998 when we were trying to write this bill, the first bill, and that I continue to interact with today are the most innovative people I've ever met. They are just always looking to do more with less, and less is what they get. Their federal money gets cut every year. So I would give you some clear examples. Number one, most of these one-stops and boards have established a 501c3 so that they can apply for foundation money, so that they can figure out how to take money from people and give them a tax credit, individuals. They've done an amazing job with that. They've done partnerships with corporate social responsibility especially for youth programs. But I would say since COVID, a lot of the CSR programs have also been around working age adults who haven't either found their place in the workforce or haven't gotten the job that they aspired to get. So I think that's amazing. And I think the workforce boards, obviously, their first partner is always business. And the way that they've dealt with business from the beginning is putting them on their board. Some of them have had to exercise their boards because their boards weren't using the services of the one-stop. Now, if you have someone sitting on a board and they don't use your service, that is not a good message to the community. So whether it's hiring from you or helping you with job fairs, whether it's doing internships or mentorships or job shadowing, every employer who sits on a workforce board should be a user of the system. And I think a lot of them are coming around to that. They were like kids. They were so happy to get these big name employers that they took them and didn't ask anything of them. They're much smarter now. They're asking. They're not just giving to, and the employers need them now more than ever. And finally, Doug, your question, in the early stages of WIA, pre-WIOA, the community colleges were kind of reluctant to get involved. The record keeping was ridiculous. If they had one person on an individual training account going into their nursing program, they had to keep data on everybody in their nursing program. That's onerous, right? That's silly. And I was part of the team that wrote that. I admit now it's just burdensome. But now community colleges are really partnering with the boards to do all kinds of services, all kinds of wraparound services, whether it's looking at what kinds of fields are out there, whether it's giving them a chance to experiment a little bit. So I think the community college workforce partnership is stronger than it's ever been. And lastly, really lastly this time, the nonprofit partnership. You look at people like Strive, Goodwill, like JVS. These are partners in different parts of the country that shouldn't be without a partnership with the workforce board. They should be working hand in glove, and in many places they are today.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. And I have to say that I'm definitely hearing more and more stories of that. I know you were at the NOB forum, you were a speaker and moderator at the NAWB 23 forum, and got to hear great stories of these kinds of things happening all over the country. I feel like
and NOB gets some credit for that. NOB has really been a great hub for information sharing, for community building, to make sure that, and they were very careful from the beginning not to just focus on the major cities. They really focused on all the boards.
Yeah. The good news, I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, is when I looked at this, here are these visioning points. I think the workforce system has been focusing on these things. Tell me if I'm wrong, but.
Yeah, no, I think they have been. I think as with anything else, there's people who are doing it at a superlative degree and people who are doing it at a needs improvement level. So I think it was, first of all, I should have started with this, incredibly brave of the Department of Labor to do this at this time. They have an interim secretary who's trying to get confirmed. Julie Sue is a rock star. I'm so sorry she's having this difficulty because she doesn't deserve it. Her record speaks for itself. And by the way, they don't have anybody in my old position. They don't have a confirmed assistant secretary at the Employment and Training Administration, which is criminal. That's 70% of the Department of Labor's budget. And I think all the actings, including Brent right now, the current one, have done a wonderful job. But a horrible thing to put them through, confirm somebody, nominates the current nominee can't get confirmed, nominate somebody else and get them confirmed. So that career staff, which is the best, ETA career staff is the best in the government. And if they don't have the cover of having a confirmed political over them, they're living in fear every day. They're afraid that it's going to change. They're going to do it this way today and have to do it this way tomorrow. You shouldn't have to work like that. So I think the other aspects of the other offices at Labor, I think the Women's Bureau took a big step there. They were terrifically involved in that. Of course, OSHA and Wage and Hour were engaged, but incredibly brave, not afraid to face the public at a time when many probably cautioned them, you should lay low. You have two people in key positions that haven't been confirmed yet.
That's wonderful. Thank you for making that point. Jane, at the beginning, I introduced you as president of Working Nation, but I want to make sure to give you a moment to tell our listeners what Working Nation is.
Working Nation is the megaphone that I've always looked for the workforce system. It is a nonprofit media entity funded by a philanthropist in LA and other philanthropies now. But our founder, Art Bilger, found this to put a face on the successes, the solutions that were out there in the hopes that would get to policymakers, it would get to others who were trying the same thing, and it would really seed innovation across the country. We've had tremendous success. I hope your listeners will go to our website, workingnation.org, so that they can look at some of the things we've made. Some that we just did one for Google and Goodwill, which is just unbelievable, talking about the progression of 3 women who got the Google certificates through the partnership with Goodwill. But the other thing, Doug, I would just say, tell us, get in touch. Tell me the stories that we're missing. We always worry that we're missing the diamonds in the rough, the places that nobody else is looking. We do those stories through video, through journalism, we have our editor-in-chief has a podcast as well. But every day we put a new article up on our website and we curate other people's articles. So if you want to look and see what's happening every day in the world of work, take 2 seconds to go to our website and look at our article, but also look at the other articles that we've curated for that day.
So that gives me a last thing to think about as you said that, which was there was one more point in the DOL takeaway, which was about share your successes. So Working Nation is certainly doing that.
That's right.
And
we don't tell bad news stories. Our purpose is to really accelerate the solutions.
I have been speaking with Jane Oates, president of Working Nation. Jane, it is an absolute pleasure. Thank you for sharing your words of wisdom with our audience.
Always fun to be with you, Doug. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to KRA's The Hub. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. To learn more about KRA Corporation, visit www.kra.com. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll be back soon with a new episode.